it was an intense course. It was amazing, and I've met some great friends there. My best friend today is a girl I met on that course. But I don't know that I would have started my own business if I hadn't done that course.
We're here with Renée Elliot, founder of Planet Organic. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
We cannot wait to dive into Planet Organic, but before I do, we'd like to give our listeners some context about how your story came about, how it began. So what were you doing before you started Planet Organic?
Well, I never had any idea what I wanted to do, so that was a problem. And I went to university as an English major, because that's what you do, liberal arts, and then came to England because I thought, well, I can spend a couple of years here before I figure out what I'm going to do. And I'd met a guy on a night bus the year before that I thought maybe not a holiday romance. He hates when I retell this story for the millionth time. But I came over to date him. I thought, we can date for 2 years, then I'll go back and start my life. And so I got a job as a journalist. I worked on magazines, and I worked for a wine magazine, so I became a professional wine taster, and it was a fun and interesting thing to learn about. I thought it's a good skill to have, particularly as an American, because we're just not that well educated about wine in the same way as y'all are having Europe on your doorstep. So that was fun, and I realized, though, on my first day at work, this is so funny. So it was September 1st, 1986. It's engraved in my memory. First real full-time job. I'd worked bartending and not bartending, waitressing and waiting tables when I was at uni. So I turned up at work, and whatever you think about Americans, we're quite optimistic and idealistic. So I sit down at my desk and I'm thinking, the world's my oyster. My life is stretching ahead of me. Monday morning, the guy next to me looks at me and says, "Can't wait till Friday." And I thought, oh my God, I'll be dead in 5 years if I don't love what I do. I'm a passionate person. So I decided on my first day at work in England that I had to love what I do. And I decided very quickly after that, working for the editor and other people in the office, that I should probably have my own company, because I hate being told what to do. And I know we all do to a degree, but I really, really bugs me. I think maybe because I'm the youngest of 4 kids and I used to get bossed around. So I worked in the wine trade until 1990, and then did a stint in America, going very deeply into personal discovery work, which has informed my life going forward. And then while I was in the States, saw an organic supermarket in Boston that I knew that I wanted to do something non-conventional. I knew I couldn't sit behind a desk. I'm really interested in looking for different ways, doing things better, asking why. And that came about from when I was 19. And when I saw this little health food store, because first it was a small store that I used to hang out in, people were on that journey. The shoppers, the people who worked there, the people who started the business. It was about better food. It was about different therapies. They had treatment rooms upstairs with things I'd never heard of then, because I didn't come from hippie parents, like Gestalt and Reiki and reflexology. And I thought, ooh, what's that? And they had a cafe. And so that's where the idea started. I thought, oh, this fits a lot of criteria for me. And then I went back to Boston, which is where I grew up. And my sister said, go see Bread Circus, which was an organic supermarket just in the suburbs of Boston. And my husband and I, the guy from the bus, walked up and down the aisles, 30,000 square foot store. And I turned to him at the end and said, I want this. I said, my stomach hurts. I want this really badly. Because it just pulled together a lot of strands from my growing up, and about food and doing it better and curating an offer that was best quality food.
Just on the personal discovery side of things, we had another guest a couple of years ago who's brilliant. He'd done a lot of personal discovery, and I think that had informed his career from then on. So what did that entail? Because it was a couple of years that you spent?
It was 6 months.
6
It
months.
felt like a couple of years. No, it was amazing. It was based on A Course in Miracles, which is a beautiful book, and a technique called rebirthing, which is a stick of dynamite. But basically, it was about letting go of anything from your past that was holding you back, shifting patterns and thought processes that were holding you back. We have beliefs. That doesn't mean they're true. People think they're true. So it's looking at beliefs in your life that support you and don't support you, and figuring out how to flip them so that they're not holding you back. And it was an intense course. It was amazing, and I've met some great friends there. My best friend today is a girl I met on that course. But I don't know that I would have started my own business if I hadn't done that course.
Right.
I believed in myself because of my parents, but after I did that, I just thought, okay, this is it. I'm doing it. It was kind of carpe diem moment.
So would you recommend it to everyone?
It doesn't exist anymore, but I absolutely recommend personal discovery, because I think if you don't dip into that in any way and don't question things and live in a way that follows the crowd, that is just not my MO, then you can get stuck and you can do things that don't make sense or don't make you happy. And I'm always looking at things saying, does this make sense? Why do we do that? Can we do it better? And really asking that question, whereas a lot of people don't.
No.
And I'm not criticizing for that. It's just that a lot of people don't question. They kind of go with the flow. And I realized when I was 19 that could be not the best place for me and can sometimes be dangerous. And I thought, I don't want to be a sheep. I want to lead.
But it's arguably the fight for your life, isn't it? Because to get to the end of your life thinking, I was obsessed or hung up on this one thing I was reacting to, whether it be money or proving people wrong, and you think, with the best will in the world, and no matter how successful I've become, I've been living somebody else's blueprint.
Yeah.
Do you think that was I guess what I'm interested about self-discovery is, do you think that was the one most sort of seismic event, or in life since then, have you gone through kind of iterations of the same sort of thing?
Interesting question. I've obviously done other interviews and I've been asked this question before, so I have looked back on my life and thought, what was the moment, or what was the reason that I took some of the decisions I did and the path I did? When I was 19, I read a book called Diet for a Small Planet by Frances Moore Lappé, which was about the horrors of the meat industry in America. And as a trusting, naive, innocent 19-year-old who grew up in rural America, I was so horrified that I could no longer see meat as healthy because of the way they fed the cattle, barned the cattle, raised the cattle, killed the cattle, that I became a vegetarian. And I was so horrified that no one was looking after my best interest. I thought that if the meat was for sale in the supermarket, then it was good for me. And when I read the detail of how it was farmed, I no longer saw it as good for me. So that was seismic for me. I thought, oh my gosh, it's not the innocent world I thought it was when I was a kid. We all have that kind of awakening. But so then that sent me on a search for people who were looking for better, and, whether it's hippies or New Agers or whatever it was, and those that ways of thinking, and that led me to the course. And the course was very much about, you don't have to be at the effect of anything, the effect of family, something that happened to you or something that comes into your life. You have the power to change it, either with your thinking or your actions. So that it was also seismic for me. It was pivotal because it gave me. So, for example, when my husband asked me to marry him
on a bus,
yeah, the guy from the bus.
So I just need to clarify this stuff. Was this a bus in England or a bus in America?
It was a night bus on Lower Regent Street.
Okay. There's a lot of activity on those night buses. Lots of rowdiness and people chatting.
This
and
was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So when he asked me to marry him, by the time he asked me, we'd been together for a while, I can't remember how long, and I could already see patterns of behavior that I didn't like and that I'd seen in other adult relationships, and I thought, I am not doing that. So I said, no, I don't want to be fighting about you throwing your socks on the floor or whatever stupid thing it was when I was in my 20s. And so we did a weekend with this organization. And what I realized at the end of that weekend was it gave us a toolkit to not do those things, to find our way through those things and not keep repeating the same stupid arguments, behavior. So at the end of that weekend, I said to him, I'll marry you. And then we got married, and then we did the 6-month program together. And when we went to do it, they said, we've never had a married couple do the 6-month program and come out married on the other side.
Wow.
I looked at him, because we've been married a few months. I looked at him and said, well, better we find out now than in 10 years.
Is that because people could be being married for the wrong reasons to sort of fill parts of...
I think it's lack of consciousness. And it's a word I don't use lightly, because a lot of people may not understand what I mean by that. But it's awareness, self-awareness, having your eyes open, being thoughtful.
It's so difficult because if you do the work on yourself, like codependent relationships in a way are fantastic because people don't realise they're in them. You have this horrible part of you that's filled up and made good, and then actually if you solve that, then you realise what you should be is two independent bodies getting along famously and respecting each other's boundaries. But when you don't realise that's what happens, you unfortunately there's nothing quite like
Find yourself in a tricky spot.
That's an amazing way, but then maybe with something as serious as marriage, which can have such catastrophic consequences that some sense
good
checks.
Consequences too.
It can have some great consequences, I'm sure. Yeah, but it's it's become a bit jaded in our generation now. People being wary about the statistics, but I think maybe that's sort of being a bit too passive about it. And what you've done is taken a proactive step to
do it
make it functional,
to make it better.
And presumably you keep referring back to that toolkit that you developed then.
Yeah, we do. And the main premise that they taught was you are 100% responsible. So there's no pointing the finger, there's no blame, because when you're in a relationship and you're not happy, you look at the person closest to you often and you hang it on them. It must be their fault. Well, it isn't. You've got to self-refer.
Yeah.
And when you have children, good Lord, that comes more into force. You can't look at your kids and why are they being irritating? You have to look at yourself. Why am I irritated? It's about taking 100% responsibility, which isn't about beating yourself up. It's about saying, what's my part in this? Which isn't, when they first expressed this idea, it was like, wait, what? Now it's second nature to me, and I'm teaching my children that. They've always been, that's always been explained to them. But it's not, it's new for a lot of people to think that.
I think we get derivatives as well. We get like bumper sticker phrases. People go self-love, and self-love doesn't mean a really nice holiday to somewhere expensive to take Instagram photos. And then owning your shit is not something you just say to somebody when you don't really like the way the argument's going. It's like it's a bit more complicated than that.
Yes.
So how did Planet Organic get started then?
I was going to say we've gone way off track.
But I think it's an important part of the story by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
So I saw this Bread Circus outside of Boston and loved it. And I came back to England to get experience because I thought, I know that I want to do this and I'm a risk taker, but I'm not insane. So I worked at Wild Oats. I went to what was the largest health food store in London and said, I want to open a chain of organic supermarkets like Bread Circus. The owner said, oh yeah, I know those, beautiful, fantastic. I said, can I come work for you and learn about the business? And he said yes. And I started at £3.50 an hour, stacking shelves, and learned very quickly. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was in the right place, doing the right thing. I thought, this is it. Things clicked into place. I loved all of it. And I'm a detail person. I'm quite orderly, and the layouts and just all of it. I just loved it. And I thought, okay, this is it. I'm going to do this. So then I managed that store for a couple of years, so I got to know the business and the suppliers or started to learn about organic for the first time, and then set out to started working on Planet full-time in the fall of '94. And what I realized after opening Planet is running a shop was nothing like running a business. I was like, oh yeah, I got this. Absolutely not. But every entrepreneur knows that. You think, you have to learn everything. You have to know everything. You have to be very fluid.
And so the first step was to open a brick and mortar store?
Yes.
And you did that on your own?
No, I had a business partner at the time. So we paired up. He had the same idea. He'd seen it on the west coast of America. And we worked together for a year setting it up, and then we opened in November '95.
Did you raise money to do that?
Yes. We raised $500,000.
In equity or debt for the...
It was preference shares that could convert.
Okay.
And
But it was really hard to raise money.
Yeah, well, I was
because
going to say,
Just
was it tough
on a
sell?
business plan.
in those days, yeah. And we had this really cute little business plan, but it was, it was...
It was 20 years too early.
It was, yeah, and people just didn't really know what we were talking about. It was a concept beyond where the market was. So it was nearly impossible to raise the money. And it's not like today. I'm not saying it's easy today, but there's a lot more opportunity.
Yeah.
In the end, it was my parents invested some, my best girlfriend, Julia, and then it was friends and family of my business partner, who was very well connected.
Right. Wow.
I was not, as an American who moved here.
Yeah. Was EIS around then?
No, I don't think so. No one was certainly talking about it that I remember.
Right.
Yeah.
So you didn't manage to leverage that?
No, I don't think so.
And in terms of picking location, was it just what was available, or did you have a set mind of where this... Because Notting Hill, for instance, if you go to Notting Hill, it's very sort of Portobello market, but I mean, it would almost suit there immediately, but I imagine you don't get the luxury of wherever you wanted to be.
We didn't have a lot of choice, and we wanted big. So the shop on Westbourne Grove that we landed on is 5,500 square feet, but that end of Westbourne Grove it's not the nice end now, it was much worse then. And at least one investor pulled out when we signed that unit. He said, no way, not there. But we had to be off pitch because we didn't think we'd make the margin, the profit to pay high street rents, which we don't. We're still not on the high street. We're off pitch-ish.
And so how was that first year?
Oh, it was... It was a roller coaster. So my husband, Brian, who'd been very interested in the business, I had wanted to work with him, but we needed his income. And he was in commercial property, so he was, interested in that side, but very interested in the running the business. And I would always go home and talk to him about it. So November, we started trading. It was awful. We didn't do any advertising because I just read Anita Roddick's book, Body and Soul, and she didn't do any advertising. And I thought, I don't really believe in advertising, so I'm not going to do that. Well, no one knew we were there. And then in December, my husband, who I really talked to a lot about business, went to Zimbabwe for a month with my brother and a friend. So he wasn't even there. And we had all the bills come in. So the credit we'd had on the opening stock, the bill came in, the final contractor's bill came in. When I'd done the course on how to start a business, I missed the bit that said you should have a month's wages for your team, which we didn't have. So in December, and I was doing the accounting at that point because the accountant hadn't turned up, and I can do numbers, but it's not my joy.
Yeah.
We had to either pay the team or pay the suppliers. So it was really uncomfortable. So the contractor held off, the suppliers gave us extended credit, and the industry is amazing and really was so supportive and has been forever. And then we started we knew we had a great story to tell. And in those days, this is so funny because I tell my kids, there wasn't the internet. It was just starting publicly. And my kids say, you started Planet in the olden days?
Everything was black and white?
Yeah. We printed letters and sent them off. People were just starting to use email. So marketing and all of that was very different. And we knew we had a really great story to tell. I didn't want to advertise, but we wanted to tell our story. But how were we supposed to reach people? It was print media in those days. So we talked to a PR company in December who started working for us that January to tell the story. And what happened was they kicked into gear in January, and then in February it was the first big BSE scare. It was mad cow disease.
Right.
Wow.
And that's what we needed.
Right.
We needed people to wake up and think about how their food was being grown and what might be wrong with that process, and how organic offered a safe alternative. So the press kicked in then. Our sales jumped and then just took off. And then later that year, there was the E. coli scare. It was when Edwina Currie was in office, and our sales jumped again. So by the end of our first year, we did 1.2 million.
Wow.
And that doubled our second year to 2.4 out of the one store. And we were then just racing after this galloping horse. That's how it felt, trying to figure out how to run a business.
Amazing. And so going to suppliers, was it easy to find suppliers of organic produce? Maybe I'm making it sound like it was too long ago, but was it Was it readily available and easy to source?
It wasn't readily available. So when we opened, the goal was an organic supermarket. And I think when we opened, we were probably 50% natural, 50% organic. We had a very strict product standard on what we defined as natural.
What is the difference?
Organic is a system of agriculture that grows without chemical inputs.
Yeah.
And the premise is healthy soil, healthy plants, healthy animals, healthy people. Natural is sort of the health food stuff.
Okay.
So whole grain, less sugar, no additives, because at that time, food was full of hydrogenated fat, artificial sweeteners, artificial flavor enhancers, preservatives, everything artificial. The food has really changed over these years. But when we opened, I remember some of the shelves, I had like 20 facings of one product because there wasn't enough product to fill the store. And we were, as I said, 50-50 on organic. But a couple of the really savvy importers saw the opportunity and started importing a lot of organic stuff. And we took anything then, really. Obviously, over time, we became much more choosy, but it almost didn't matter what it tasted like or looked like because we had to fill the shelves, and we wanted to offer better everything. But we also opened with an organic meat counter with 3 butchers. We took in whole carcass and butchered down to sausages. Even though I was vegetarian, it was about offering better, because I thought if we don't sell organic meat, we're in a way supporting conventional meat, which I don't really believe in.
Makes sense.
We had a wet fish counter, sustainably caught, and we had very strict guidelines around what we would sell and wouldn't sell. The business has evolved since then, but we, and now we had the first organic juice bar, and we first to sell organic wheatgrass juice. And
what were the products that flew off the shelves in the early days?
I don't remember.
So it wasn't anything.
Did you ever walk in and think, oh my God, we have a lot of wheat germ, for example? It's like 3 aisles of it.
No, I mean, when we first opened, it was a mess, and I remember we had tons of pasta spread everywhere. But we've had thousands of products because we did health and body care as well. So all the natural remedies, because it's about not going for medicines, drugs, going for healthy different remedies, and from Bach flower remedies to homeopathy to vitamins and supplements and herbs, and so I think when we opened, we had about 7,000 products. I think now we have about 9. So it was a lot. And when I remember when shareholders were coming in later, they'd say, well, what are your 20 bestsellers? And it wasn't 20 bestsellers. There were a lot of products that sold a fair amount, but it's not like that. There's a high turnover of a lot of products.
What's quite interesting with Planet Organic is, to the point you just made, I imagine people would go in there under the ethos that it's good produce and therefore could do the whole shop within your store.
Well, that was the point.
Yeah.
The point was exactly that, which I didn't say. Our goal was to be a one-stop shop, and it was trolley shopping.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted one level. So you went in and you got a trolley, which I hadn't seen in a health food store until then. You got your trolley and you could buy everything. So we had everything you would find in other supermarket, but it was organic or natural, and it was the best quality. And we had the juice bar and health and body care, which supermarkets weren't doing then either.
And so then it continues to grow year on year, or you how did you start to sort of choose your second, third location, and do you think actually we're smashing this? And
well, after 2 years, my partner decided that I should leave the business. Okay. And that led us down an unpleasant legal battle. Obviously, I won because I'm sitting here. Thank you, God. And then when I did win, I said to my husband, please come and work with me. So Brian and I ran the business for a long time. We ran it together for 10 years.
Amazing.
Sitting desk to desk. And what's interesting about Planet is it's values-led and commercially driven, is what I've always said. And it was my goal to prove that could work. And he was really the commercial side, and I was the value. So it was an interesting relationship and tension, because there is a tension between those two, not in a bad way, but you're always balancing and weighing that up.
And did your toolkit, your personal development Discovery Toolkit come into
Yes.
play there as well.
Yes.
And presumably not just between each other,
Absolutely.
but with the other people in the
Yes.
business.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So I did, when I was starting Planet, I remember my mom, who hadn't really worked, she worked before she started having kids, and then in those days it was more normal not to work anyway. But when I was starting Planet, she said, "Are you worried about being a woman in a very male world?" And I said, "Yes, probably." Haven't really thought about it. And she said, "Be feminine." She said, "Don't be shy of that." I don't know how she knew that, but that was so wise. And I decided that being feminine really informed how I wanted to create a business that was values-led, that was thoughtful and kind, and that informed how we treated the team, how we set up the training, how we spoke to each other. And I said from the beginning, we treat each other with respect, because organic is based on respect for the soil and the plant and the animal and the person. And I thought it just makes sense then that we're embracing that value, which is really important to me, in our MO. So we had our values through our product in terms of the product standard, what we would sell. And then we had values in terms of how we ran the business and how we talked to people, how we treated people.
Were there any key times where you'd have genuine disputes about commercial interests versus keeping to those ethics? Yeah, so I mean, because it's still a problem we haven't solved to this day. People still haven't worked out where the lines between what's impactful, ethical, and what's profitable exist, other than to defer it and throw cash at planting trees somewhere to offset the terrible things you might be doing with your with the business right at its core. Because also you're then held to that standard by external observers, and people are waiting in the wings to point a finger at you and say, "But you said you're good."
Absolutely. And I think more so in England, because I felt like in England they wanted to put us on a pedestal when we said we're doing all this good, we're good people, we're trying to do good, we're trying to make positive change. And then if they can find a chink, they'll knock you off and kill you.
Yeah.
Kick you. So it was tricky then. And it was almost better to not say you were trying to do a good thing, because you kind of set yourself up to be shot at. But I mentor new businesses, and my business plan template starts with values. A lot of business plans start with financials, and I think, how can you start there when you don't know what you're doing? So we start with values, and that's what I did at Planet, so that whenever we were faced with a difficult commercial decision, we'd go back to the values, because that's your yardstick. That's, what are we going to do in this situation? Because you're always hit with difficult decisions and unexpected challenges where you think, "Oh gosh, what do we do in this situation? We didn't see this coming." And then you go back to your values and you say, well, what's the right decision based on that?
And within the structure you've created, you touched on a really interesting point, which was your mum saying to be more feminine. Did that work in discussions with investors and other parties? Because I think we fall victim of this situation where female empowerment can sometimes be in the form of sort of patriarchal hierarchy, but as adopted by a female, rather than actually moving the other way and seeing feminine qualities as a strength, for instance. It's like, actually what we need to do is be more male than the males, or something like that. And it's like, it becomes quite disparaging of the role of a sort of feminine presence in the workplace. And so you saying that worked and was rewarded and
I think it's important to be who you are.
Yeah.
So I did take that on board for my mom and thought, well, it's who I am, and I'm very open, and I'm very honest, and I thought I can't pretend to be something I'm not, and I never do anything by halves. So it was being a woman and being feminine and kind of working that in a nice way. As you're saying, it wasn't about trying to adopt qualities that people may associate with business that are harder. It was just being a woman.
Can you see? Oh, sorry, Ellie.
What did that 10-year period look like, where it was you and your husband, and then what happened at the end of that? Presumably you expanded quite quickly, and did you move online?
Yes, we did. So we opening the second store, which happened, I think, 6 months after, or a year after my husband joined Planet, after we took over, was really interesting, because I was, by that point, running what was a shop, and untangling the shop from head office and setting up all the reporting so that we could then bolt on other stores. And he really did that. I could do that. It's not interesting to me. I did all the creative stuff instead. So the teamwork worked really well, and he introduced Food to Go. This was in the Torrington Place store. And then we opened more. So we won the company in January 99. So then we expanded over the next few years. And then in 2002, I had a baby, my first baby. And that changed everything.
Right. As it tends to.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I had no idea. So, and I thought, I'm a businesswoman, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm bringing her with me, and you can do that with one. So I took her into my girlfriend at the time wasn't working, so she was helping with Jess, and Julie would bring her in, and I'd breastfeed, and then she'd wheel her away, and I'd go up to Soil Association meetings in Bristol, and Julia would come with me with Jess so I could breastfeed, and I'd sit Jess on the table at board meetings, and she'd stare at the guys, and, it was great. And I thought, well, this is cool, this works. And then I had a second one 3 years later. And then you think, okay, I have a 3-year-old and an infant. This suddenly doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I stepped away from the business a little bit. So Brian was doing more, and I was always there and in and out. And then he was expanding, and we were, opening more stores. And then I had a third. And this is now, so I had my third in 2008. And I thought, after a year, I thought, oh my God, I am so stressed. I'm exhausted. As I said, I don't do anything by halves. So there's me wanting to be the mother I wanted to be. I had this idea of what that looked like, and wanting to run Planet, which was, I always refer to as my first baby. And I felt ripped in half, and it was absolutely awful. And I hit a point where I thought, I've got to choose. And I thought my choice is I either hire a nanny to raise my kids, or I hire a CEO to run the business. And it's an awful choice to make. And I don't have, people make the decisions for what's right for them. There's no right or wrong. And I chose my kids because I thought, well, I've had them. I'm going to be with them. So a CEO came into Planet at that time. There was a handover period. And then my husband left. He stepped out of the business. I stepped away. And I said to him, take a year off. It's been so intense. It was not an easy business, difficult recessions, shareholders, lots of complications, really hard. Amazing, but really hard as well. And he said no, and I said, take a year off. He said no. And I so pushed and pushed, and finally he said, okay, I'll take a year off. So I said, okay, great. And then I said, let's take it in Italy, because we had this little farmhouse in Tuscany. And he said no, and this went on. And then I said, look, I need to get out. I just need to stop and power down. So I said, I'm going to buy a car. We didn't have a car in London. Who needs a car? I'm going to buy a car, put some stuff in a trailer, and go. Are you coming? And he said, okay. So we went to Italy for a year.
Amazing.
And we grew food, and we farmed olives, and I was writing a book. And I was back and forth for Planet and the Soil Association. But we just came back to earth again, and it was the most beautiful chapter in our lives. And we were together all the time.
Wow.
The kids went to an Italian school, very small village school, and a year turned into 3.5 years.
Wow.
Because we couldn't leave. I didn't want to leave.
How did you leave in the end?
Brian said, if I don't go back to work to property now, because he wanted to get back into commercial property, he said, I don't know if I will. And his real question was, how do we want to educate the children? Do we want them to be in the Italian system? Do we want to come back and have them? Because they weren't learning English. Yeah. And I was not going to homeschool them. I'm not that person. Yeah. So I would have loved to have been able to do that, but I thought, I'll kill them. I don't have the patience. So we said, okay, we want them, I'd love them to learn to know Italian, but I want them to know English is so important. So we moved back, and we moved back to Forest Row in East Sussex so that they could.
Was that a tough decision?
It was a tough decision, and I have to say I came back kind of kicking and screaming. And I said to him, I'll give it, I think I said 2 years, and if I can't do this anymore, we'll have to go somewhere else. And nowhere else.
Yeah.
Maybe to America, maybe back to Italy. But I just wasn't, having lived in Italy and experienced that completely different culture where I feel really at home. They're very ebullient. They're very effusive. They're tactile. They'll hug you. And I thought, wow, I've missed that. I wasn't sure about coming back. But I love Forest Row. And after a couple of years, I said, yeah, this is good.
It's good because I guess once you start the process of putting your kids first, vis-a-vis stepping away from planet, going to Italy, your value system is then putting your kids first, so their education comes first, and you can defer to that decision-making sort of framework, as it were.
Yes.
And then did you step back into Planet full-time, or what was the...
No. So we came back in January 2013, and I went and talked to the CEO, and it was very much, he was running the business by then, and I was involved, but I'd been coming back and forth and meeting with him, but it was, I didn't really see that happening. Sometimes I'm a bit blinkered, but obviously that had happened. So I thought, okay, I still do a couple days a month at Planet then, and I thought, what else would I do? Because I said to people, I set Planet up. When I set it up, I said to have meaningful work that I love for the rest of my life. So now I thought, okay, what else? Am I done? Is that it? Is it me and I'm a mom now? And I thought, okay, now I'm way not done. I have a very strong urge to, as many people do, to contribute, to make a difference, to make it better. So I thought I'll just do work I love. I'll just do what I enjoy and see what happens, which was very different to starting Planet. When I started Planet, I said, I want this, and I painted this very specific, clear vision, and I went for that. And this was, well, let's try a few things and see what happens. So I started teaching healthy baking out of my kitchen. I was then asked to teach at a college in London, healthy baking. I was asked to do a Guardian masterclass on starting a business. That started me on this route of public speaking. From that, people started to come to me, primarily women at the beginning, and say, will you mentor me? And I thought, I don't know. I don't know what that is. I don't know. And then someone in one of my audiences was a publisher from my previous book, and she came to me. She was at a new publishing company, and she said, will you write another book? So I just started doing lots of different things, and I started the mentoring. And then I had this idea. So then we also had Italian girls coming to the house from some of the parents I'd known while we were there. And they said, look, she needs to learn English. But because it's me, they come into the house and they're there to learn English, but I'm teaching them to cook and bake. And then we're talking about, when I said to you about this personal development, then they say, gosh, you speak to your kids, it's really interesting the communication you have, and I see how you talk with your husband, and you all go off and meditate together, and they'd ask questions, and I thought, wow, they're really keen to learn. And some of the girls I was talking to were then going to university and leaving, and they were saying, I don't know anything about relationships really, and I don't know anything about having a baby, and I thought, wow, who does? What did you learn at school that informs how you live? So I started to formulate this idea of an academy that would teach girls life skills, what I consider life skills, the stuff that's really important, like how to manage your finances and your personal finances, and how to wean a baby, and how to communicate in your relationship with your husband or people you work with, or just all those areas of well-being. Because for me, well-being started with Planet in terms of food, which is one of the, and for me it's the foundation, because if you're not well, you can't really do anything, or you're limited in what you can do.
Yeah.
But I'd been developing these 6 spheres of well-being for those decades, and I started to think about teaching those and having this academy. So then I thought, okay, how do I take that to the next step?
And that is Beluga Bean, right?
That's Beluga Bean.
How did you come up with the name for that?
I found a business partner again, a guy called Sam Wigan, and he and I were kicking around. We decided to work together, and we decided that we would start this journey together. And we were kicking around names, and the cool names that we could think of were taken or didn't seem to quite encompass what we were trying to do. So then we thought, well, we could just pick like a Japanese word or a fruit or something. And I was writing this book that I referenced earlier, and I'd just written about beluga beans, beluga lentils, which are very, very small and pack an incredible nutritional punch. And I like full of beans, you know, bean counting. It was kind of the business skills, the life skills. And I said to him, well, what about beluga bean? It's not really, it's beluga lentil is the thing.
Yeah.
But I said, what about bean? Because I like alliteration. And he said, oh, I love it. And then I thought, I'm not sure I love it. I'll think about it. But I really like it. And it doesn't matter. You know, the name of the company doesn't matter. The names of the courses that sit in the academy make sense, like Nourish and Flourish and Balance. So those have meaningful names. It's just the umbrella for the...
And so now, how does the business work? Is it still people come to a physical location, or is it done through sort of online channels?
It's a mix of things at the moment. The longer term vision is that I would love to have a physical space.
Yeah.
But we're still early days, so it's a combination of meeting in London. We have 2 breakfasts a month, so it is a business and life skills academy. So the business side is the business planning, and life skills cover the 6 spheres of well-being. Would you like me to tell you what they are?
Yes,
Please. Yeah.
Your faces. Oh, yes. It's physical, which breaks into sleep or rest, movement, and food. And then occupational, psychological, economic, social, and spiritual. And for me, that covers all the spheres of life and well-being that are important that you don't necessarily learn at school or from your parents. And the business side, as I said, is really the business planning and strategic planning. But in everything that we do at Beluga Bean, it's a whole person process. So when I take someone through the business plan, module by module, when we look at, say we do brand, there's 50% of it is business and 50% of it is personal discovery. So when we do brand, then we do play.
Okay.
When we do marketing, then we do communication. So it's because I can't, you know, I'd sit down and be working with men and women on their business plan, and then something else would creep in, like they want to have babies, or their wife isn't that supportive of what they're doing because she's really nervous about so then we'd go into kind of communication, and I just can't, I don't look at anyone as a narrow strand. It's, you're a whole person no matter what we're talking about. And people, some of my early clients would say, oh, could we talk about that? Could we talk about me having a baby? And I'd say, of course we can. You know, we can talk about anything. Because for me, it's all about the life plan. It's not, there's nothing in isolation. It's about your life and how you're living it.
Yeah. And so when you say that you're doing mentoring, is this what you're referring to? Or do you have...
Yeah, sorry, I lost my flow there. So we do 2 breakfasts a month in London, and those are round tables with a themed topic. So it may be, if it's a personal connect, we call them connects, it could be about parenting, it could be about body image, it could be about exercise. They go across the 6 spheres of well-being. We do a business connect breakfast once a month, and that covers mainly subjects through the business plan. But could be, like the one coming up at the end of this month is workflow. So it's managing projects and flow and prioritizing and all of that. And we meet groups of people, and it's a conversation. It's about coming with a pinch point or a pain point, unlocking it with a solution and creating momentum and finding inspiration. And those are terrific. Then we have one-to-one mentoring, and I do one-to-one mentoring on the business planning.
Okay.
And then we have classes that are starting in a couple of months that are a deeper dive into the 6 spheres. So there may be one on early motherhood. There may be one on bereavement. There's one on home finance. You know, they cover, and we'll be building and creating more courses, because if you want to know how to do these things on your own, you know, I didn't leave school with that kind of knowledge.
Yeah. Do you think that schools maybe should, because I think my mum said that she did home economics at school.
I did
which,
too.
Yeah, which maybe sounds a bit outdated now.
Yeah.
But some of those skills are really ususeful. Like if you know how to do,
they are life skills.
Basic accounting. Yeah. And I left school could do Latin and Greek and not much else.
I think that actually, to that point, of the people who come to you, Is there a typical misbalance or misalignment of those 6 values that you often see?
No, it's different from person to person. What I find is people aren't necessarily aware, and that's that consciousness I was talking about. They aren't necessarily thinking about, say, their spiritual well-being or their physical well-being in terms of sleep, even though it's everywhere. If you have your eyes open and you see that, there are books everywhere about sleep now, and it's part of the conversation. But people are so busy, and the world is moving so fast. Everything's moving so fast that sometimes it takes drawing it to someone's attention to say, look, are you exercising? Are you eating well? Are you sleeping? Are you having fun? Are you having fun? Because some people say, oh, you have fun with my kids. And I say, well, are you having fun with your husband? No. And it's just kind of, I feel a lot of times it's getting people to just stop.
Yeah.
And take a breath and look at their lives. And we have a process that takes people on that journey.
Like an audit or something?
Yeah, it's a very lovely process where you look at all the
Not
areas
like an audit.
Yes,
of your life.
Renee's auditing you.
Where we take them on a journey of self-discovery, and they look at those areas of their life really honestly and then commit to an area that they want to improve. Because it's not about a quick fix, and it's not about saying to someone, oh my God, you have to do this now, and sending people into stress, because, that's the worst thing. Nothing we do should ever create stress. It's about gradual change and an upward spiral of improvement and excellence all the time, so that life is getting better. And our tagline is make it better.
Are we being denied some of that introspection by the influence of technology now, do you think?
You're not denied anything that you choose to explore.
Okay. Yeah, but
it's crowding. It's crowding everyone's time and mind. And I find, one of the things I see now is there are so many people who are talking about being addicted to their phone. Can't put it down. And not just millennials. I have friends, my age, a little bit younger, who are so attached to their phones, and I think, really? I'm not. That just doesn't happen to me. And I can see all kinds of things in the future where people are going to be trying to break that attachment, put it down, and I'm already seeing that happening, around. But I think it's about, if you're moving fast, you're not necessarily going to think about these spheres of well-being. If you stop, and we even say it in business, we have entrepreneurs, new businesses, even like 7-year businesses, where people are just what I call rushing headlong, firefighting, and they're not stopping to be strategic. They're not stopping to horizon scan because it feels counterintuitive, and it's like, I can't possibly stop, I have so much to do. But when you stop and pause, you then move forward in a much more thoughtful, strategic, creative way. And a lot of what I do is that as well.
And it's exactly what you did when you decided that you were going to step back and move to Italy, and you're obviously happy with how the result. Exactly.
Yes. And my husband said it was the best thing he did. He was so terrified to take a year out. He thought that would be the end of his career. And he said it was the best thing he ever did.
And how did you feel coming back? Because I guess you were so far ahead of where the trend came in. So to come back in 2013, you said, and see this sort of hype of all these sort of alternative health foods and this industry grow. What was your feelings about that? Were you like, I'm done with this in the sense that I was of old, or this is exciting, or this is a bit kind of full of bullshit now, or
I'm always interested in food because I have a real passion for food, and I'm still involved with the Soil Association, and now I'm involved with Garden Organic as well. So that remains a real pet project of mine. I think it's brilliant. I think anything to move people forward into better eating is great. So I love some of the things I've looked at and thought, really? But in general, I think the movement towards better eating, people being more aware of what they're eating and why, and the impact it has on them, it's just brilliant. And I think it's really transforming. It's moving much faster than it did before. So I think it's great, and I do watch it with interest.
And to close the chapter on Planet Organic, are you still involved at all, or have you totally stepped back? And did you sell the business?
So I came back and I was kind of 2 days a month, and I'm the brand guardian and spokesperson. As I said, I do a lot of public speaking. And then last October, a year ago, so about almost a year and a half ago, a VC came in to Planet they bought over 50%, and they made a commitment to open 2 stores a year over the next 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And that really changed things. So I'm exiting at the moment.
Okay.
I still have shares in the company, and I'm really excited about where Planet's going, but it's in safe hands, it's in new hands.
Yeah.
And I feel, and what's really nice for me is it's hard to do 2 things, and to close the door on that chapter and move my focus completely to Beluga Bean is just brilliant.
Mm-hmm. So your first baby's flown the nest.
Yes.
And you're happy with it.
Yes, and a girlfriend of mine said, Renee, when Planet was turning 21, she said, it's an adult now.
Yeah.
You can let go. And I thought, oh, yeah.
And those expansion plans, do they see it? Do you tackle the US? Because that's one thing I think I was going to ask earlier, was whether you'd ever go back into States.
No,
Was that?
because Whole Foods opened so long ago. I can't remember. They opened, I think they'd been running 15, 20 years when I opened Planet Organic.
Okay. So
they've got the US covered. And you say you're going to the US. We're not going outside the M25.
Right.
So it's very, we haven't saturated London yet.
Okay.
That's interesting.
It was funny, one of my first clients that we fundraised for, and I mourn its loss. I don't know if you ever ran Fulham Broadway, but there was something called Union Market.
Yes.
Do you remember on the corner? And I loved Union Market. It was great. You went there, and it was like a really old shopping experience in the old ticket hall, I guess, of what Fulham Broadway Station was.
Yes.
And try as I may to keep it afloat and keep it trading, it failed. The landlord had pushed the rent up on it such that they couldn't keep paying. And then not only did that building stay dormant like a skeleton in my memory for like 5 years, then Whole Foods opened opposite it to rapturous welcome and all this stuff. And I just thought, oh God,
But it was the same premise.
I mean, it's so similar,
right?
And then actually now they have something called the Market Hall, which is sort of a take on Union Market. So I mean, with them it was a timing issue, and that might have been 2011, 2012. But yeah, it just couldn't stay afloat and alive and well. So with Beluga Bean's growth, how many people were you trying to sort of help per year?
How do people sign up?
Well, I just, as you were talking, I thought, I forgot to say the most important thing is it's a membership academy.
Okay.
So if you join, it's £30 a month. We've tried to keep the price reasonable. You get the 2 Connect breakfasts as part of that, and then you get discounts on classes and mentoring. So it's a membership academy that we're growing slowly, and we're not doing social. I don't do what most people are doing.
Yeah,
it's really word of mouth and through the speaking I do, public speaking, that people come to us, and then you're getting people who are on the same page. It's not to say we won't do something in the future, but it's a slow burn. We're growing it slowly and working out how the website works and all of that. Right. So it's a really nice
for people interested in memberships, it's belugabean.com.
Yes, and what we do, which is a nice way to experience it, because if you don't know, if you haven't connected with me or Sam, then it's like, well, what is it really?
Yeah.
Is we do a first event free. So if you go on to the Beluga Bean website and go into the calendar, you'll see the events that are coming, the Life Connects and the Business Connects. And if you click through to Eventbrite at the till and type in first event free, squished together with capital FEF, then you can come and try one and see if you like it, see if it's supportive, which is what it's the only thing it's really meant to do.
Yeah. It was funny because I don't know how I'm on your email newsletter list, but that's how I came up with the idea of reaching out, and it was a really useful one about. So I was I'm on the advisory board for a company that is, I guess, tackling the nursery issue with professional working people in Canary Wharf. So they want to open an on-site creche where if you work in Canary Wharf, you can drop it off, and they'll be sort of
Drop it off.
Well, you don't want to assume it's gender in these day and ages, right? So drop it off, and then it's nearby. So how can you put a price on being able to see your kid at lunch break if you work in a really big bank, stuff like this? So this is all coming along, and the exact email that you sent across was about parenthood and work and stuff like that. And I think it is a timely resource, because I'm seeing on the other side how much I think there's a lot of good nurseries out there, but it seems like this has not been universally solved as an issue. And there's still lots of questions for people around how we...
Yes, absolutely.
Because, I mean, that's the difficulty. There is a big drive towards female entrepreneurship at the moment, and I think that's obviously fantastic, but it can't avoid the elephant in the room that motherhood may sneak in and may be a factor that will have to come into play. And when I see my friends with their wives, often a lot of them are going, yeah, I'd love to sort of do something exciting and work for a startup, but actually I'd much rather go somewhere that's got good mat leave, reliably will pay me, will still be there in 3 years' time. And it's like, well, of course I can't blame you for making that choice. It's a big life decision, and we can't keep pretending it's not. I don't think anybody does pretend it's not, but it's just, it needs to be navigated with people who've got experience of trying to do both, have a sort of viable opinion on it.
Yes, and I think until you have kids, you have no idea.
Really?
You have no idea. It's so all-consuming.
And I'm assuming they were not problem children, especially. You just...
No, great kids.
Yeah.
But what you end up with is 3 human beings who need your care and attention. And although, husbands can be great and dads can be great, and my husband's great, it falls on the woman mainly. And when I was 19 and had this kind of epiphany about the meat industry, and became a vegetarian, I also I thought about having children, and I thought, I will never have children, because I was aware of those 6 spheres of well-being that I've referenced, and I thought, I cannot take responsibility for those 6 spheres for a human being. You have to, if you parent that way, which I knew I would want to, because I know how I'm built, look after their psychological, occupational, economic, spiritual, physical, sleep, rest, movement, nutrition. Oh my God, I thought I'll be a nervous wreck. So when my husband and I, when I married my husband, I said, I will never have children. If you want children, marry someone else. I'm terrified of that responsibility. I will not do that.
I do think this in life. I think some people do things with an amazing, I don't know, they just step into it, don't they? And it just happens, and they go, I've had kids, and this is all happening. And I've always been reticent, because I always think that there's a huge consequence. I can't just try marriage. I couldn't just try having kids. It's not something I will stumble into.
You can't put them back.
It's not the way my mind works. I always think of the consequences of what
Return to sender.
Yeah, I know. I said that to my husband. What if I don't like them?
Yeah.
I can't.
Well, there's many a father that's run away from the home, but less so with mother figures. I think you guys have a sort of more dying loyalty, and
we have the uterus. We are the caretakers. I mean, that's why it falls on the woman.
Yeah. Well, and with this balance, are your kids entrepreneurially minded?
My son is.
Okay.
My son is. He's running a tuck shop at school.
Oh, nice.
And he's making good money, and he's getting kids to trade up to healthier snacks. So
oh, nice.
It's fantastic. Nice. And I'm watching this thinking, I said to him the other day, I said, you should just keep some notes on this, because it's a really nice story, and you're not writing anything down. He's having fun. But I said, just write a few things down, like this year I made this much, or this term, and he is entrepreneurial.
But he might get told off for that.
No, the school knows.
Oh, they know?
That the head of house is buying from him.
See, I did this we had a snack machine in our common room, and I filled up 6 or 7 layers with the stuff we shipped in from a housemaster, and then went to Woolworths, and there's a bucket full of like 20p sweets, and I lined the bottom few shelves with my ones on it. And then when it came to the stock take and the money, I'd be like, well, I paid like £35 of inventory. I'm now owed my £47. So I would not nobody would lose money. I just would use a store shelf. But it wasn't rewarded with encouragement or anything like that. In fact, actually, just got shut down. And
how funny. Well, Brian, my husband, has sat down with Nix and done a spreadsheet for him so he can track purchases, margin, profit. So
that's the way to learn.
That. I know. He's 14, so it's a really good learning.
I had to ask this probably before we move to the final questions. What do you feed your family? Generally, I know it's difficult.
We eat really well.
But like, what does that look like?
Really well.
Tell me.
We don't eat meat.
Right.
We do eat fish. Now my husband doesn't, but the kids do. And it's broad, it's whole grain, it follows the guidelines I set at Planet, so no farmed fish, organic, always organic. But even that, so I'm a real believer in not creating stress and not making it awkward for other people. So I say to the kids, when you're at home, you eat really well. Follow the 80-20 rule. When you go out, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Don't get freaky about, because the last thing I want to do is create eating issues, stress, difficulty for parents. So they don't worry about it. So they'll go out and they'll go to a party and they'll eat crappy chocolate or whatever. But they know the value of eating well and feeling well. And we eat, I cook everything from scratch. I make our bread. I make whole grain spelt and sourdough rye. I bake our treats. I cook every day. I mean, I'm nuts. I'm insane.
God, where were you when I was getting given burnt sausages? And
I make pie.
I'm going to come to East Sussex.
And we eat, it's, I don't know how you say it in a short way, but, quinoa and spelt. There are things that we don't eat, like wheat and meat, things that I don't consider to be healthy foods. But it's a very broad and varied diet, and they're all different. So my eldest has a phenomenal diet, and she'll eat and try anything. My youngest is really hard work.
Right.
But it's a constant journey. And I do things like and especially when they were little, and I'm going to do it again with my 12-year-old soon, because if a kid says, oh, I don't like that anymore, and they're not taking new foods on, they start diminishing, and you think you can't do that, or you're going to be eating nothing by the time you're 25. So every now and again, I blindfold them and give them foods to try. And there has to be trust, and there has to be fun. So the first thing may be a strawberry, but then it may be a bit of quinoa. When she says, I don't like quinoa, I'm like, what's not to like? It's what you put on it or do with it.
It's like a medium for something
for
else.
Anything, for a sauce or a vegetable. And there may be some asparagus, which he has refused to try. And then you take the blindfold off, and there are always surprises. Oh, I do like that. Or, oh, I don't know that I actually did try that. When she takes the tiniest
it drives you mad, doesn't it?
Yeah. So... yeah, but we eat really well, and I love food. I love cooking.
So we'd like to end with some quick fire questions that you may or may not have prepared for. So the first one is a prediction for the future.
I think we can make it better.
A book that you'd recommend?
Well, I'd have to say, I could list probably 20, but I think I would say The Sneetches by Dr. Seuss.
Oh, nice. Nice.
And actually, you did drop a couple of good books earlier, I noticed,
and many
in the conversation.
Books,
yeah. And then also, your own books, just quickly, what are some of the ones? Because there's one came out in the last year, or was coming?
It was a couple of years ago. It's What to Eat and How to Eat It.
Okay.
Because it was this idea that there's so many voices out there on the internet saying, eat this, don't eat that, eat this, don't eat that. But if you're looking for an authoritative voice on what to eat, so what you should eat more of, and it's not superfoods and such, it's broccoli and beans and beluga lentils and that sort of thing, and how to eat it. Because the other thing I meant to say about allergies is it's not just about those elements I mentioned, but also we don't always prepare food the way we should, because it's all fast. It's fast food. And food needs to be prepared properly to be digestible and for us to assimilate the most from it that we can. So it's about how you prepare it. So when I do speaking, I used to say, and I often would say, who eats quinoa? And, first there were a few hands. Now all the hands go up. And I say, who soaks it? Okay, and like 2 hands go up. So eat quinoa, yeah, but please soak it. So it's how do you prepare the food to get the most value? And it's 99 ingredients that you should eat more of. Cool. And then What to Eat and How... Best Recipes for Babies and Toddlers was a weaning book I wrote. And then Me, You, and the Kids Too, which I really have a soft spot for. It's about when you're having kids. Because when I had kids, I just cooked for the kids. And I think my husband and I lived on salad and bread. It's about cooking for the carers, whoever they are, and then pulling out ingredients and cooking for the weaning baby or slightly older baby from your meal, which is how we used to do it, I'm sure, in the olden days. And other countries still do it, but I didn't know how to do that.
Interesting.
Awesome.
Available on Amazon, no doubt.
Yes.
If you could have dinner with anyone tonight, who would it be?
My mom and dad,
Oh.
who passed away.
Is that for latent? Well, I guess for loads of reasons, wisdom.
My gosh, because you think, oh, I've grown up now, I don't need them in the same way, or I don't need them anymore, or thank goodness I had them until I was this age. But then all the time you think, oh God, now I'm this age, I wish I could ask my mom that. Or I'll pull a recipe out of hers, because my mom was a phenomenal cook and baker. And I'll think, when you say beat this until thick, or put it over the double boiler, how thick? Like back of the spoon thick? And I would just pick up the phone and say, Mom, what would you do? Or I'd, talk to my dad about something, and they're not there, and you realize you'd love to have them forever.
Yeah.
And
I think we do sort of sit there and go, oh, that's a good innings. And it's like,
it's not. You always miss them. The missing them, the intensity of that eases. But the number of times I think, oh, Mom, where are you? I wish I'd asked that. Or, so that would be unbelievable to have dinner with them.
I guess it's a reminder to profit from that relationship while it's still available to you.
Yes, very much. Don't let that slip by. You'll never regret spending more time with people you love.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty sage advice.
That's very good advice. Then the last one is, what is the best advice you've given or received?
I have a few. One is, so my dad said to me when I was little, teenager, I think, he said, Renee, there's no reason you can't do what anyone else can do. And I remember being so struck by that statement, because I didn't have the best education. I'm not the brightest bulb in the box. And he said, it doesn't matter. It's about determination. And he was right. And I believed him. I was naive enough to believe him. And I absolutely believe that, because I know, and it's funny because I thought this at the time, and now it has been proven. Angela Duckworth's book, Grit, The Power of Purpose and Determination, is phenomenal. It has been proven with the work that she's done and others that talent is great and talent is very seductive, but determination and grit win every time. So that was from my dad. The other is trust yourself, trust your gut. And I wish I'd been told that when I was little, and I tell my children that, because there's advice of well-meaning people, there's what you should do or what your head says you should do, but you listen to your intuition, your gut, that inner knowing, never steers me wrong.
Well, and then the last question we like to ask is, if there's anybody listening who can help you in any particular direction or journey, what would that be?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I think I would say come to a Connect breakfast at Beluga Bean and tell us what you think.
Amazing.
Come on us. Come for free.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, it's been fascinating. Thank you so much, Renee.
That was fun.